Here in the smart world, it really feels like nearly everything has become a subscription, and nearly everyone has gotten sucked into these things as well. The average American spends around $273 per month on subscription services, and $70 of which is just on streaming. And the problem is that streaming services aren't even really good anymore. I mean, I remember when Netflix and Spotify first kind of came on the scene, and it really did seem like a pretty good value proposition for what you were getting. But nowadays, folks, not so much. Like so many other parts of our online experience day to day, streaming services have been overtaken by what is known as enshittification, where platforms prioritize shareholder profits over the user experience. So if you're anything like me, you're probably sick of paying for these products and you want to find a way out. Well, folks, this video is exactly that. 5 swaps you can make today so you can cancel those streaming payments and consume media on your terms. But first, if you don't know me, I'm Spencer, and I like to talk about simple living, frugality, and digital minimalism. Let's get into it. So quickly before we get into the list, I just want to bang off a few of the issues that I have with streaming services nowadays. The number one and biggest issue with these platforms for me is the fact that even if you're paying for the content, you're still getting ads. When streaming first came out, the whole idea was it was going to be content on demand, ad-free, your way. And in a lot of ways, these services have betrayed that early promise. Almost every streaming service at this point has some tier where you are paying for the content, but you still have to watch quite a few ads throughout every program. To me, that is just the most egregious offense. In my opinion, if I am paying for the content, I shouldn't be getting any ads. The whole point of having ads in the content is so that you don't have to pay for it. That at least is how it worked with television. So yeah, the ads for paid content, big no-no for me, especially because I find that there's quite a few ads and I find it quite interruptive. Another issue with streaming services is that you just don't own the media that you're paying for. You're paying for a membership to this rental service essentially each month where you have access to those titles, but as soon as you stop paying, you own nothing. And that's a big issue with streaming services because a lot of us have gotten rid of all of the media that we used to own, stuff that we had physically that we actually had ownership over, and we went fully to streaming, and now we own nothing and are stuck with these payments. There's also the issue with movies and TV show episodes being censored, edited, or even completely removed from platforms. And that's a whole can of worms, which I'm not going to get into today, but the crux of the issue is this. The media that you're paying for, you have no control over when you're streaming. Lastly, I will say that I'm not 100% anti-streaming. No, I do not think it's a good deal to be paying for content and still have to see ads throughout it. I'm really bothered by that, as you can tell. But if you do see the value in streaming and want to pay for it, I understand. I would just say to do that intentionally. Don't just treat it as a guaranteed monthly expense, which you're going to incur every month. Get the service, benefit from it, watch all the shows and movies you want, and then cancel it. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the list. Because you might be wondering, okay, I want to cancel my streaming services, but what do I replace it with then? So first off, the easiest swap that I have for paid streaming services is to utilize free ones. Now I know it's a bit funny to kick off a list of ditching streaming services by suggesting more streaming services, but I'm really going after the paid ones that are the big problem for me. I think the free ones are actually pretty good. There's actually a ton of great free streaming services out there owned by bigger companies as well that might own paid streaming services like Paramount. Some of the ones that I use and recommend are Pluto, Tubi TV, as well as Plex. These services offer a lot more of what I would call bargain bin movies and shows, stuff that probably doesn't cost nearly as much to license as shows like Friends. But it's still a great selection and all of the content is available completely for free. But the catch for these services is that although they are free, they come with ads throughout the content. So if you have a completely no-go rule as far as ads go, then these free streaming alternatives, they're probably not going to be for you. It'd be better to move on to my next one. However, if you're somebody who's okay to watch a few ads throughout a show in order to watch it for free, I still think it's a much better deal to watch than something like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus, where you're still paying a monthly fee, but you're watching ads and a very similar amount of ads to what I'm getting for free on these services as well. And if you use all of these different free streaming services, you're going to get a great assortment of content. Now, no, you're not going to find something like Severance on there or whatever show is the talk of the water cooler this week, but you still are going to find some really solid offerings. Just looking at Tubi TV today, I saw stuff like Hell's Kitchen, Commando, Idiocracy, and Walking Tall featuring The Rock. And sidebar, I loved that movie growing up. The part when he's walking around with the big 2x4 and he smashes the guy's taillight and then says, "Your taillight's out." I honestly just love that part. To like 10-year-old Spencer, really cool. Now, Pluto functions more like live TV, and in fact, it is live TV, except it's broadcast over the internet. They also have all different kinds of shows that play 24/7 live, but then also on demand if you want to watch episode by episode. There was classics like Three's Company, Gunsmoke, Rawhide, CSI, NCIS, and even X-Files, which is a huge favorite of mine. I was unaware that they had it, and I will likely be watching tonight. These alternatives make quitting streaming a lot easier because you're not really quitting. quitting at all. But to me, this feels like a lot more of a good deal for the consumer because you're getting all of this content for free, except you have to watch some ads rather than paying for the content and having to see the same amount of ads anyway. And I would say that the ad frequency on these platforms, they're not bad either, especially compared to Netflix or Disney Plus on the paid tiers where you're still getting ads. I would say the frequency is about the same. Okay, so now to my second recommendation for how you can quit paying for streaming in 2026, and that is to utilize physical media. Now, looking online, physical media seems to be having a little bit of a moment. My girlfriend sometimes sends me stuff that she sees on Instagram, reels and different things that seem relevant to stuff that I talk about here on the channel. And I've been really surprised to see how many different creators, different people who are in very different niches like fashion and other types of things are talking about getting into physical media in 2026. And it's not hard to see why. Of course, there's a bunch of great reasons why physical media is still very relevant today and very much worth keeping around. But the first and most important thing, the most relevant to this conversation, is that you actually own and have control over the media you're paying for. And before I go any further, somebody always chimes in with something like this. They say, actually, you do not own the physical media you're paying for. You own that one copy and a single license to use that one copy to watch that media. That is all you own. And it's like, thank you very much for letting me know that. I really appreciate that, because up until now, I was actually mistakenly going around to people and I was saying, many people don't know this, but I'm the owner of the Lord of the Rings franchise. The main appeal of physical media here, the ownership of it, is the fact that people aren't going to be able to take away this content or alter it on you without your consent. That's something that's just literally not part of the DNA of streaming. It's not part of the deal. With streaming, it's much more akin to a rental service, like a Blockbuster, but on a monthly membership. Who's to say if they're going to have your favorite movie and show still in stock next month? They have it today and you can watch it as much as you want for now. That's the promise with streaming. With physical media though, rather than having to chase your favorite show around from one platform to another to keep watching it, you can just buy that thing, put it in a drawer, and the hunt is over. You can watch that media whenever you want, no permission needed, no password, and that is a small thing, but it is very powerful. Now I have a collection of records for music, some CDs for listening to in the car, and a drawer full of movies and shows on both DVD and VHS. This gives me a really nice curated assortment of content that I can entertain myself with whether I have a streaming service or not. And don't feel like you have to go all or nothing with this physical media approach either. Now I strive to be a little bit of a minimalist. I'm not very successful at it because I'm much more naturally a hoarder in my life. So I personally don't want a giant media room with wall-to-wall shelves of DVDs and Blu-rays. I have my one curated drawer of DVDs and VHS tapes, content that I love, and I cap it at that currently. So please do not feel like you need to become your own personal Blockbuster to get into physical media, because it's really just a very choose your own adventure type deal. Now the third alternative I have for you to paying for streaming services is to buy digital copies of your content DRM free. Now this mainly just applies to music because the film and TV industry have done a pretty good job keeping customers from owning digital copies of their movie catalog, but as a Spotify replacement, this is what I do. Now I canceled my Spotify account just over 2 years ago, and I don't stream music in any way now, except for the odd song over YouTube. Music and Spotify was probably the first category where I realized if I stopped paying for this content, I really own nothing. I mean, I literally had no music at all once I stopped paying for that Spotify membership, and that sucked. That actually bothered me quite a lot, and for around my New Year's resolution of 2024, I vowed to quit Spotify, and that's what I did. So at that point, I was left trying to build up a music catalog that I owned on my own, and that led me to find a few different websites that I could use to buy music that I actually owned, I could download and use for playback on my computer or my phone or even my iPod Classic. The sites that I use to get my music are HD Tracks, Qobuz, 7 Digital, Bandcamp, and occasionally the Apple iTunes Store. All of these sites allow you to purchase and download copies of your favorite songs and albums in the highest qualities possible, and there's no DRM on the files. Now DRM means digital rights management. This is essentially a software baked into the file that prevents you from copying it and using it on any device you want. DRM was meant to be an anti-theft thing to prevent unlawful sharing of media, but in the end what it really has done is water down what it really means to own content digitally. Now these sites are the exact opposite, and over the past 2 years I've downloaded a lot of albums and built up some really solid playlists I love, and I don't miss streaming at all. Once in a while when a new album comes out and I want to check it out but I haven't bought it yet, I'll just look it up on YouTube and listen to that, watch a music video or something, and then make the decision if I want to purchase it later. If you do want to keep streaming, you just can't see yourself parting from that massive catalog like you have on Spotify, I'd recommend checking out Qobuz as an alternative. Qobuz has their own streaming platform as well that's quite reasonable. They pay among the highest to artists per play for their music, and they offer some of the highest fidelity playback amongst other streamers as well. Another good tip for starting your music catalog is if you're somebody like me who maybe has had an old MP3 player or iPod laying around with tons of music from your childhood that you'd ripped from CDs or even got from iTunes, well then you can actually actually pull that music off of your iPod and get that digital music collection for yourself started in a very big way. I have an old iPod Nano that had tons of music that I had ripped from CDs back in the early 2000s and that I had even bought on the Apple iTunes store. But unfortunately, I didn't have any of that music backed up on my computer nowadays, and I wasn't able to put it on my phone for listening that way. But a super cool thing that many people don't know is that if you plug that iPod into your computer and then look up how to unhide folders, you can find the music subfolder and access all of those tracks, and then move them over to your phone or your computer or another iPod for playback there. Like I said, this was a great help getting all of that music that I owned that I had paid for in the past and had on my iPod off of that device, so I was able to put it on my phone or my computer and really start my music collection off right. Now, my fourth recommendation for how you can start watching content for free without any streaming services is to pick up an antenna. Yeah, folks, an antenna. I'm serious. This is a bit out there in 2026, I know, but it's honestly a great option if you want to continue to have access to live television for current events and big broadcasts like the Super Bowl and the Academy Awards without having to pay for something like a cable package. Now, my antenna is made by Philips, and I paid around 20 bucks for it back in 2022, and I love it. How many channels you get with your antenna really depends on where you are and how strong your particular antenna is, but here in the city of Toronto, I've had some pretty good luck with it. At my old apartment, I was getting probably 30 channels, completely different ones than I have here. Stuff like Storage Wars, ALF, and American Pickers. Over here, I'm getting more local programming and news stuff like CBC, CTV, and other types of things, but I'm pretty happy to have it. Now, just like watching regular TV or even the free streaming services I mentioned earlier, you are going to have to watch ads when you're watching over an antenna. And given the fact that antenna television is real television, it's quite a lot of ads. But again, this is really just such a cheap cost to get into this thing, and it's just nice to have this to reduce my reliance on streamers for my sole source of content. No one of these solutions is going to really be the be-all and end-all option, but in combination, it really does provide a very viable alternative. And once again, these antennas are just so cheap to try out and get into. I think the one that I have is about 15 USD if you wanted to pick it up today, and I'll link it in the description if you want to check it out. And at that price, I'm kind of thinking, why not? It's a very cheap way to get some live TV, and if you still live in an area where over-the-air broadcast is available for free, then I think it's a solid option. Lastly, folks, my fifth and final free alternative to streaming services in 2026 is to utilize your public library. Now, first off, I have to say that I have recently learned, just in the course of doing videos on this subject, that the public library is not free in all different parts of the world. But wherever you live, if you have a library in the area, it has some pretty good stuff, and the fee isn't too large to join, I would still say it's probably worth it. If you're into physical media, the library can be a great place to go to supplement your media catalog without having to store all that stuff in your house. And something that many people forget is that your local library often has a lot more than just books. My local branch has a huge collection of movies and shows on DVD, as well as a large CD collection. I've seen some pretty new DVD releases at the library, and even niche punk albums I wouldn't expect to find, and the best part is that all of this is available for free. I've also found there's quite a few highbrow movies at the library, which is pretty in keeping with the educational reputation for sure. One of the nearby branches to my house has a whole Criterion section in it, so you can still keep your film snob status, don't worry. So for a long time, while I knew about the physical media offerings at the library, I had no idea that they had digital offerings as well. But many libraries actually offer streaming services to access content digitally. Mine uses a platform called Kanopy. This allows you to get a certain amount of movie tickets each month, which means that you can essentially take out 16 titles per month. And remember, if you live in a house with multiple people with multiple library cards, that adds up. That amount of free tickets has proved just fine for me, because as I mentioned, this is just one part of my alternative streaming system. So if you're into physical media, but you don't want the added clutter of having a huge media room inside your home, the library can be a great option. And again, because I utilize all of the alternatives I've mentioned today, I find it to be a perfect complement to my setup already. I have my curated drawer of physical media, movies and shows, and if I want to go beyond that, I go to the library. And for streaming, I have Kanopy and all the other free options I mentioned too. And folks, I guess I just want to leave you with this. This is all about trying to be more intentional with your tech usage and content consumption. And there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all approach to this. Now, you may watch more or less streaming content than me, and therefore you may need more or less of these options to replace that content in your life. Obviously, you know what's best, so just dial this in as you please. I do think there's a huge benefit in decentralizing our approach to tech and media consumption, not giving all the power to the own nothing, be happy streaming services who coax you into ditching your media collection for their service and then make it worse over time. Don't get stuck in a system that isn't working for you. Try some of these alternatives out and see if you can take back at least some of your power with your media. That's about it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd be interested to hear from you though. If you have any streaming service alternatives, any recommendations that I didn't mention today that you found valuable, let us know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. I'm on vacation next week, so I won't have a video then, but I will see you in 2 weeks in the next video.